The Georgia Bulldogs start the 2024 season as the favorites to win the Southeastern Conference, but could Alabama, Ole Miss, or Texas take that top spot? And how many teams make the college football playoff?
This is the 2024 Locked On College Football Season Preview, only on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into the 2024 Locked On College Football Season Preview, SEC edition, the best football conference in all of America. I'm Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC, and we will hear from several of our local experts throughout the best conference in college football before we discuss how many teams make the playoffs and who could surprise. We have to hear from the true contenders in the SEC, and that's where we welcome in our panel of Jonathan Davis, host of Locked On Longhorns, Daniel Monroe, host of Locked On Bulldogs, Stephen Willis, host of Locked On Ole Miss, and Jimmy Stein, host of Locked On Bama. Gentlemen, welcome in. Good to be first in pod. Y'all are the contenders. It feels good, right?
Oh, yeah.
Feels great.
Well, let's start with the champs, or the predicted champs, Daniel. The Georgia Bulldogs getting 46 first-place votes in the AP poll that just came out this week. Everybody's kind of consensus. They were the pick to win the SEC at Media Days. They're the #1 preseason team, according to just about everybody. Let's start with the Bulldogs. Why can Georgia win it all this year?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's probably two different conversations. Favorite to win the SEC or favorite to win the whole thing. I think Georgia's got a really talented team coming back, obviously led by Carson Beck and the offense. But the schedule is going to make it difficult, I think, to even get to the SEC championship game, much less win the SEC championship game based on how things shake out. I mean, Georgia plays on the road at all three of these guys this year, and so it's a tough road. And so does Georgia have maybe the most talented team in the SEC? I think so. Does Georgia have the best chance to win the SEC? I'm not really sure if that's true right now.
Let's jump over to Jonathan, who the Longhorns, it's not Alabama as the second best odds in the SEC. It's the Texas Longhorns. Steve Sarkisian, they take that huge leap forward last year. They make the playoff, and now here they are. Quinn Ewers is back and plenty of other cast of characters. Why can the Texas Longhorns win it all this year?
Well, I think you look at the roster, you talk about that offensive line that could win the Joe Moore Award. Quinn Ewers, a certified Heisman candidate coming into the season. We did lose 2 running backs, but we know Steve Sarkisian has had a 1,000-yard rusher every year since he was at Washington. He's going to figure that out. We're 6 deep at wide receiver, 3 deep at tight end. And then you're looking at a defense that I think is going to surprise a lot of people this year. You also look at the schedule, right? We have Georgia on October 19th. Those are the big dogs. That's going to be a tough game in DKR. But outside of that, in terms of your SEC schedule, the next best SEC team you would play based on the rankings is Oklahoma, right? So Texas definitely has a favorable schedule. That's why I think Texas could end up in the SEC championship game and ultimately win it.
Yeah, I know you mentioned those injuries. C.J. Baxter, one of the starting backs, goes down for the season, and Christian Clark, one of the incoming freshmen, he's out for the year. So it's, Jaden Blue, put him in bubble wrap. They're going to need him in that run game for Texas.
Yeah, I don't want him doing anything until August 31st, Gordy.
Yeah, for real. How about the Alabama Crimson Tide? It is a new day, a new age. It is post-life without Nick Saban and Jimmy Stein. Kalen DeBoer got a lot of people excited with Jalen Milroe back at quarterback to see what this offense could do.
Yeah, the emphasis is sort of switching really from Nick Saban and his 17-year run of defense to Kalen DeBoer, bringing him in with obviously his offensive background. I think DeBoer arrived at a good time where he has an experienced quarterback who's a playmaker. The offensive line looks improved over last year. The running back situation looks improved over last year. Really, the questions for Alabama really are on the other side of the ball for really what amounts to the first time in 17 years. The other side of the ball is going to tell the tale for Alabama. I agree with the other guys. Schedule determines so much now. Now you don't have an East and West. The schedule's a real grab bag. And, Georgia's is really tough playing everybody on the road. Texas a little more light. I think Alabama's somewhere in the middle between Texas and Georgia there. But 3 road games against top 15 teams, that's going to be awfully tough for any coach, particularly one in year 1. But the emphasis is on the offense and what Jalen Milroe can do in this Kalen DeBoer scheme.
Yeah, the good news for Alabama, they get a couple of tune-up games with Western Kentucky and South Alabama to kind of get their feet under them and get some of those young DBs some experience and some early playing time. How about the Ole Miss Rebels, Stephen? Lane Kiffin, all he does is just keeps winning in Oxford, taking this thing to the next level and the next level. And, I mean, I guess the next level is making it to the playoff. And you look at Ole Miss's schedule, my goodness, I mean, even if they lose their 2 toughest games, they're going to go 10-2 and likely make the playoff.
Yeah, and Jackson Dart is a third-year starting quarterback. He's like the ultimate unicorn in college football, a Lane Kiffin year 3 quarterback, to where if this season just goes to chalk, he's going to end up the winningest quarterback in Ole Miss football history, a school that has had 2 Mannings and have about 90 to 95% of the quarterbacking records. And that's not the story of this season. The story of this season is the fact that they really bulked up through the transfer portal on their trenches after the Georgia game a year ago. That's going to give them a chance to really compete for a championship this season.
Daniel and Jimmy, one of the biggest early season games, and it's weird to get this game on September 28th, but it's Georgia in Tuscaloosa playing Alabama. I mean, it's a huge game, and it kind of means something. It used to be when you were a West team playing an East team, you go, if we lose that one, it doesn't matter. We'll still win the West. Well, now this thing's wide open, so this game does mean a little bit more. Daniel, thoughts on playing this one so early in the year?
Yeah, I think it's fun when you look at the way Georgia's schedule breaks down. It's obviously tough, but you get Clemson in August, you get Alabama in September, you get Texas in October, you get Ole Miss in November. And so it really is spread out and spaced, those marquee games that Georgia's going to be in. But yeah, I mean, this is, it feels like an SEC championship game between these two teams, but the likelihood is that the loser of this game is not going to the SEC championship game. And so I do think it means a lot. You add teams, especially quality teams like Texas, no disrespect to Oklahoma, a little bit more down this year maybe, but you add teams and you add quality teams like Ole Miss are on the rise, teams like Mizzou, or, there's a lot of good teams in this conference. I think if you lose this game in September, yeah, you're still in line to make the playoff. It's still going to be fine in terms of big picture goals. But if you're trying to make it to Atlanta and win the SEC, it's going to be a tough road in front of you if you lose that game. So, yeah, it means a lot.
Jimmy?
Yeah, it's a huge game. This has turned into one of the league's better rivalries, really. There's been just so many high-profile Alabama-Georgia matchups. It's not like they're just playing in the regular season. There's been a lot of matchups in Atlanta and even in the college football playoff. In that sense, it's big, but I agree with Daniel. The loser of this game is still going to be favored to make the playoff. So in that sense, it's not that big of a game. But on the other sense, if you want to get to Atlanta and play for the SEC championship, it is huge. It's hard to imagine the loser of that game making it to Atlanta, but it is going to be really big. And Alabama will have it at home. Alabama's other tougher games, I think, are on the road. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a heck of a first night for Kalen DeBoer in the SEC.
Yeah, the expanded playoff gives you a little room for error, but not a ton of room for error. You still got to win some of these big games. Jonathan, when I look at Texas's schedule, there is no Ole Miss, there is no Alabama. They do get the luck of the draw. I think with this schedule, we mentioned you will get Georgia at home, but that Oklahoma game, I mean, to me, still probably the biggest game on the schedule because they've kind of had your number here in recent years in that rivalry.
Yeah, 2 out of the 3 years that Steve Sarkisian's been at the University of Texas, Oklahoma has won that game. I think when you look at it, they're replacing almost their whole offensive line, and then they're replacing Dylan Gabriel coming in with Jackson Arnold, who only has 1 career start. And in that start, he threw 3 interceptions. So, I do think, like Daniel said, that this Oklahoma team is down. But, when you look at it, I think the last 10 years, 8 out of the 10 games have been 1-score games. So anything can happen in the Cotton Bowl. Anything can happen in Red River. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. But the way it's gone, Texas lost, Texas won, Texas lost. So if you're going by that, it's our year to get a victory in Red River.
It still feels weird to be talking Texas and Oklahoma here on our SEC show, but here we are.
Get used to it, Gordy. You got to get in line. This is a new SEC.
Stephen, you look at Ole Miss's schedule. What game or two concerns you most?
The LSU game is probably the most important game on the schedule because obviously a Georgia game sitting out there. If Ole Miss gets to the Georgia game undefeated, that's going to be one of the biggest games of the season in the Southeastern Conference. But to get there, you have to get through LSU and Oklahoma. So those 2 games are very, very important. Oklahoma is an 11 o'clock in the morning game, which you know, for a team that's experiencing the Grove for the first time to have an 11 o'clock in the morning kickoff, I kind of feel sorry about that. But those two games are probably the most important. The most likely traps on the schedule, though, is probably the Arkansas game and the South Carolina game, because South Carolina has this weird fetish about Juice Wells that I just don't understand.
Well, he did come over from Columbia. He is now in Oxford. And by the way, that LSU game, Ole Miss has not won in Baton Rouge since 2008 when Houston Nutt was the head coach. So it's been a while. Lane's going to have to do something he has not done yet in his tenure in Oxford. All right, guys, I want to kind of open it up to the panel here. Give me a team in this group of Ole Miss, Texas, Bama, Georgia that you're kind of a little bit skeptical on. If I had to say, you know, one of these teams is not like the other, give me one of these schools you think maybe doesn't belong in this conversation of getting ready to possibly run the table and win the SEC.
Nobody wants to go first here.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say, you know, Ole Miss, I think is a team that it would be fun if it was a year where Ole Miss was playing Texas and Ole Miss was playing Alabama and not just Georgia. You know, I think Ole Miss is going to be really helped by the schedule. And I'm not sure that the other three are. So I think that's a team I'm not necessarily skeptical of. I'm pretty confident in predicting that Ole Miss will actually make the college football playoff, which is a big deal regardless of what your schedule is. I would just say that once Ole Miss gets to the playoff, let's see if they have the same chance of advancing as the other three. But really, I think all four of the teams that are featured in this segment are national top 10 teams this year. And there'll be great matchups if all these teams end up playing each other. But Ole Miss is the one where I'd say, are they as talented overall depth-wise as a Georgia, as a Texas, as an Alabama? That starting 22, though, looks really good.
Yeah, if I'm going to, you know, name a team, I think all of these teams are going to be really good. But if in terms of skepticism, I think it would have to be Alabama, right? When you replace Nick Saban, you know, even with a coach that's won 90% of his games, you still don't know what to expect. I think Jalen Milroe was really good at times last year, but at times also left things to be desired. That offensive line, you're hoping they can take a huge leap. You know, I remember the Texas game, they were not good at all, you know, got better over the course of the season. And then, like Jimmy said, the defense, you know, is a question mark, especially when you lose a phenom type talent, you know, like Caleb Downs. So I expect Alabama to be really good, but in terms of all the teams on the panel, they have the less continuity coming in. And so, you know, we have to see it. And continuity means a lot in college football.
And it's a great point. It's a lot of people wondering if Kalen DeBoer can do it at this level. Look, they say, oh, he won all those games. Well, this ain't Sioux Falls, buddy. It's the SEC. You got to prove it here on the biggest stage. And Steven, you got a team in this group you think maybe might not be here come the end of the year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Alabama, and it's not because of the talent, because Nick Saban stacked that roster. There's 4 and 5 stars everywhere, but Ray Perkins just can't get out of my head whenever you're replacing a legend. And I think that there's going to be a little bit of a growing pain that happens, and that maybe they're a 9-3 team. I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but it's something to where, you know, Georgia gets them, Oklahoma gets them, you know, and it kind of snowballs a little bit. And I am curious to see how that fan base takes a 9-3 season. I am curious to see what that would look like. But that would be the one that I'm worried about. Although Texas is one running back injury away from officially being on that list.
Yeah. Steven, I think we know how the Alabama fan base is going to take a 9-3 season. Like we all know what that fan base is going to do if it's a 9-3 campaign. Yeah, I think it's tough, Gordy. It's a tough question. You're just trying to get rival fan bases mad at us and messaging us on Twitter, which I appreciate. I can appreciate it for the content. I think if you look at Alabama, it is an unknown with, you know, what's the new look team going to look like. You know, Tavares Robinson comes over to Georgia, you know, as another piece to that puzzle of the Nick Saban, you know, era sort of being flushed out of Tuscaloosa. And so this is a lot of Kalen DeBoer's team with Nick Saban's players. And so how is that going to work? I think there's too much talent for the team to not be really good. And Kalen DeBoer's too good of a coach for the team to not be really good. But I do think there's some question. And then, you know, Steven mentioned it in the open. For Ole Miss, it's all about the trenches. Ole Miss is the team we haven't seen do it, right? Of the other 3 teams, they've all been there. They've all been to the college football playoff. They've all played competitive games and been on that national stage and beaten teams and advanced. And Texas gets the win in Tuscaloosa last year, makes the playoff, and Georgia and Alabama, obviously recent national championship and college football playoff appearances. And so Ole Miss is the team we haven't seen them do it. And, the Georgia game last year, 52-17, like non-competitive games against elite teams. He mentioned the trenches, bulking up in the transfer portal and the trenches. Like that to me will be the answer to that question will be the answer to the question, is Ole Miss here at the end of the year? Is that true? If that's true, then this team can be competitive in this group. If it's not true, then I think it's going to be a similar looking Ole Miss team to what we've seen in years past.
And Gordy, if Ole Miss is able to compete this year, it is because of that whitewashing that they took down in Georgia a year ago and what they did to correct it.
Yeah, what I love is that they went and they hit up the portal, but they got established SEC stars. It's not like they went and got, a D lineman from Indiana. And they got established guys who we know can play in this conference. Walter Nolan, Princely Amon-Mielen, Juice Wells. I mean, these are guys we know can play. And now it's all about the big C word, chemistry. And by the way, Stephen, the old running gag, it was never ask an Ole Miss fan directions to Atlanta. They don't know. They've never been there. But maybe this is the year. Maybe they finally get there and break through. So we shall see. By the way, I like that nobody picked Georgia. We're not going to expect a Carson Beck. He goes out there and struggles.
Come on, guys. Come on, somebody.
The schedule. I mean, Georgia's schedule is for real. I mean, they're the only team that has to play all the other three on the road. And that's really tough. If Georgia gets to Atlanta and enters the playoff as the number 1 or 2 seed, they will have earned it.
Yeah, they will.
The thing I'm looking at is Kirby Smart does such a good job of putting a fake chip on those players' shoulders, so them missing the playoffs and beating Florida State by 60, I think is going to carry them throughout the season, So, I think Georgia will be fine except for October 19th in DKR.
The worst case scenario for Georgia, honestly, if you think about the 1990 Michigan team that had Desmond Howard, that somehow went 9-3 that season, but they were by far the best team in the country, that is the worst case scenario for Georgia.
Yeah, Stephen really breaking out the college football history book here, like really
our resident historian, right? Yeah, our resident historian.
I love it. I almost want to challenge one of you guys on your shows to do a prediction that Georgia will lose 4 games, just because it's going to wind up on a highlight reel later in the year for Georgia's social media team. So
hey, message me on Twitter when you do that, so I can direct all my listeners to your show. You'll get a lot of downloads that day. I promise you, you'll do it.
Daniel Monroe, host of Locked On Bulldogs, Jimmy Stein, Locked On Bama, Jonathan Davis, Locked On Longhorns, and Stephen Willis, Locked On Ole Miss. The contenders, guys, appreciate it. Coming up next here on our Locked On preview, we are going to take a look at some of the teams in the middle of the pack. There are a few teams that have a shot to make a run. Could it be the Tennessee Vols, the LSU Tigers, Mizzou? That's coming up next on the 2024 Locked On College Football Season Preview, SEC Edition. I want to remind you guys, today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. And look, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks on their app that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on the great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It is awesome in the Gametime app. Go check it out. They've got the all-in pricing. That's my favorite feature. You toggle that. It shows you your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Of course, seat views is an awesome feature. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what the view from your seat is going to look like. Of course, they got the lowest price guarantee. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if there is a difference in the price. And of course, the Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Go take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Gametime app. Download Gametime today, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege. If you've never used them before, it's going to get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off. Download Gametime today. It is last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And look, all throughout this summer, FanDuel has been hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's been something for everybody up there every day, all summer long. All you got to do is head to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of the end of your summer and then the start of college football season. It's upon us. All those week 1 lines, they're up there right now. You want to get in on some of the action? You like LSU minus the 6.5 against USC? You can get in on that. They got that right there. Maybe some of the heavy favorites. If you like Texas to cover a big number against Colorado State. They got that for you over at FanDuel. Hey, maybe you feel a little bit gutsy. You think Texas A&M can cover that 1.5 at home against Notre Dame in week 1. They got it there at FanDuel. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com, start checking out all the action. Again, if you've never signed up before, take advantage, download the app, get signed up just in time for football season. And of course, FanDuel, they're also the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Our 2024 Locked On College Football Season Preview SEC edition continues on here as we get to the next crop of teams in the SEC. And we welcome in Andrew Stefaniak, host of Locked On Aggies, John Miller, host of Locked On Mizzou, Eric Kane, Locked On Vols, Matt Moscona, host of Locked On LSU, and Jay Smith, host of Locked On Sooners. Gentlemen, welcome in, and we're making a case for your team. We'll start with you, Andrew. The Aggies, man, have they come light years from the doldrums of Jimbo Fisher and the bio to now all of a sudden a preseason top 20 team. Give me a thought on the Texas A&M Aggies and what to expect heading into 2024.
You got a healthy Connor Wegman for the start of this season, a quarterback who many in college football aren't talking enough about. You've really fixed the issues you had last year in the secondary. Coach Elko nails it in the transfer portal. Texas A&M is a football team that a lot of people are writing off. But as Geno Smith said, they aren't writing back. This is an underrated football team that I really think could win more football games than many expect.
Yeah, big loss with losing Ruben Owens just recently, but of course they still got Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss in that backfield. And you mentioned Connor Wegman, the quarterback, and to see if he could take his game to the next level this year. John Miller, Missouri, man, what a year they had last year. Last time we saw them, they're beating Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, and yet still they can't get into the preseason top 10, just outside the top 10, outside looking in. But that might be just what Eli Drinkwitz wants with this team, saying, hey, don't hype us. We'll start at 11 and we'll work our way into the top 10.
Yeah, it seems like the consensus is Missouri's right there in terms of being a contender for the playoff, but nobody really has the guts to put them in there. Well, I have the guts to put Missouri in there because I think with the lion's share of that offense back from a really good team last year, really the question mark is 5 guys drafted on defense this past spring, a new defensive coordinator. What does that side of the ball look like? That's the question to me, but I think the Tigers truly are a college football playoff contender without a doubt.
Eric Kane, I know he spent much of this offseason rehearsing pronouncing Iamaleava. Give me the thought on Nico and the Vols in Josh Heupel's 3rd year there in Knoxville.
Now, I learned that name in 2022. I mean, my point is the anticipation has been there for years, and finally it's Nico time in Tennessee. So, I mean, that's where it starts, that's where it ends. I think Nico's got some playmaking ability, that rivals some of the best quarterbacks in the country. If he all puts it together, the way Tennessee's coaches and some of the talent evaluators and the recruiting industry believe that he can, well, Nico's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But not just Nico, he's got playmakers at wide receiver, super, super deep there. In my opinion, the best defensive line in the SEC, one of the best defensive line, deepest defensive line in the country, no doubt, and the best pass rusher in the country with James Pierce. I mean, Tennessee's a very veteran-led team. You got a good quarterback in there, and I think it can click this year for Josh Heupel, and Tennessee should be the real deal.
Matt Moscona over at LSU, Brian Kelly, man, year 3 at Cincinnati, a monster year. Year 3 at Notre Dame, a monster year. Here he is, year 3 at LSU. Is this the year the Tigers break through and make the playoff under Brian Kelly?
Well, I know that's the hope, and Brian Kelly's been big on by year 3. He's got his systems, his culture all implemented. I don't know if this is the year. I don't think, as silly as it sounds, you lose Jaden and 2 first-round picks at receiver. They've got tons of talent on offense, but they were historically bad on defense a year ago. I mean, they've been playing football since 1893. That was statistically the worst defense ever. So they'll be better, but how much better is the question to fill that gap. And a schedule filled with landmines, it's possible. Vegas has their over under 9.5. On the high side of that, they get to 10-2. They could get in, but that'll be a heavy lift if they get there.
Jay Smith, the Oklahoma Sooners, welcome to the SEC. My goodness, you look at that Sooner schedule. It is brutal, but what can the Sooners do here in year 1 in the SEC? You look at the Vegas win totals. FanDuel, they got them at about 7.5 wins, so not huge expectations for Oklahoma, but where are you on your Sooners?
Yeah, because the questions there is going to be the offensive line, bringing in 5 new guys. Luckily, we have a coach, Bill Beatonbow, who's been there for 12 years. So for Sooner fans, that's not that much of a concern, just questions to see who's there and then a young quarterback. But the one thing that we do have is Brent Venables as a head coach, bringing back 86% of our defensive production, which is number 3 in the country. Phil Steele has our linebacker unit and our secondary unit as the best ones in the SEC, number 2 in the country overall, because it's all veterans. And when you have a Brent Venables-led defense with a bunch of veterans, that means that defense is going to be pretty good. They have been trending towards the same trajectory he had at Oklahoma and Clemson. So it appears that if things fall in the right spot, may have a top 10 defense.
Let's kind of open this up, and of course, anybody jump in if you hear something that triggers you. But Eric, what's the one game you look at Tennessee's schedule and say that's one we absolutely 100% have to win?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about it, around the country and certainly around the SEC because it's one of the new kids on the block. It's week 4, the SEC opener on the road for Tennessee. It's at Oklahoma for a number of reasons. I think Oklahoma's obviously a really, really good team. Really good defense, as Jay just pointed out. Josh Heupel going home, so there's a national narrative. Nico versus Jackson Arnold, there's a quarterback narrative. But I think if Tennessee's able to get that game on the road, say you lose to Alabama at home and Georgia on the road, but you beat everybody else. I mean, you're still probably going to the playoff there with a 10-win season. So it's the tempo setter of the year, SEC opener, Tennessee at Oklahoma. I think that's huge.
John, what's Missouri's one must-win game this year?
It depends on what day you've asked me. People have asked me that question. I've said Oklahoma before. As of right now, at this moment, I'm saying Texas A&M. That's the opener. And frankly, Andrew has made me a little more scared of the Aggies with his opener there. But I really think Mike Elko is going to be a good coach for the Aggies. I do think, though, that you need to get him in year 1. It's going to be the Tigers' second SEC game, first one on the road. I think we need it if we're going to make the playoff.
Andrew, what's the Aggies must win? They've beaten LSU the last 2 times at College Station. They could do it again. What's the biggest game for you?
To me, it is one of those two. It's either LSU or Missouri. I look at this Missouri team and I go, okay, both of those teams are coming to Kyle Field. What am I more scared of? A guy in Nussmeier who I really like, but he hasn't proven it yet fully. Then you got a quarterback in Cook, who he's a veteran. He's played a lot of good football. And I'm a believer that Missouri is a team that people, while they're ranked high in the AP poll, people aren't talking enough about them. So I think the must-win game at home for the Aggies is that matchup with LSU because I'm a little bit more concerned about Missouri.
Matt, I give you one guaranteed win for LSU this season. You can pencil in a W on any mark on the schedule. Where are you putting it?
Do you mean the most important or just I can have LSU in any game?
You can put a W next to any week. Which
Alabama,
one you doing?
Because I've talked so much trash about Alabama this offseason. I would love just nothing more than to see LSU beat Alabama so I can troll the hell out of Alabama fans even more. But Gerdo, it may not matter. Andrew thinks the Aggies, despite being 20th and winning, 5 games last year, are underrated. John thinks that Missouri lost 5 defenders, but they're still going to, and they're DC, they're going to be great. Apparently, Tennessee's got the 85 Bears on defense, and Oklahoma's got a top 10 defense. And that's not including Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss. I mean, LSU shouldn't even show up, man. Apparently the SEC is the deepest it's ever been, and everybody's going to the playoff.
I love it. By the way, the Aggies won 7 last year, so give them a little bit of credit.
Oh, damn. It's a good season at Kyle Field. Yeah, 7 wins. Huge. Way to go, Jimbo.
Yeah, it was an interim coach. John, what's the biggest concern for Missouri if you had to pinpoint one issue on your team that keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the defense in general. There's some question marks there just in terms of new faces and all that good stuff. Of course, hey, as Matt well knows, y'all stole our defensive coordinator. Congratulations. You have Blake Baker now. So we're going to have to see what happens there. I feel pretty good about what Missouri has here, but it's totally fair to make that a question mark. Offensively, I think Missouri's going to be one of the elite teams in the country. Defensively, just based on what I've heard on fall camp, I like what I've seen. If I'm on the outside looking in, totally fair to question it.
Jay, what's the biggest concern for the Sooners?
For us, honestly, it's going to be the tight end room. We haven't really had a tight end play very well since Redden Willis did 2 years ago. Last season, it was pretty bad with Austin Stogner. As much as I loved him, he was a shell of himself. And so for us, especially in the Seth Luttrell offense, he needs to have some tight end play that's going to be good. Now, bringing some transfers, cool. But until I see them on the field, I got questions. I think that's probably one of the bigger concerns for me this season.
Eric, what keeps you up at night with the Vols?
Secondary, brand new starting five back there in the defensive secondary. A lot of key depth pieces, a lot of experience has left the Tennessee defense. But as Matt pointed out, 85 Bears up front might not be as talented, but probably deeper than that unit. Best cornerback on Tennessee's roster is number 29, James Pierce. So I think that defensive secondary is going to be okay.
Yeah, and by the way, the Vols, they lose Jordan Thomas, their star player for the season, but Boo Carter, straight out of a novel, hopefully stepping in as a true freshman. Andrew, what's the biggest concern for the Aggies?
It's a bad problem to have, and I wake up every day screaming, worried about the offensive line. It's a unit that they could be good, but if they're not, what could be an elite offense won't be all that great. So Coach Adam Cushing, who came with Coach Elko from Duke, has got to get this unit looking good, because if it doesn't, it could really waste a good unit and a great quarterback.
Last round of questions here. Throw it over to Matt. Matt, I gave you $100 on FanDuel. You can put on any of these teams. Can't be LSU, but it could be the Aggies, Mizzou, Oklahoma, or the Vols to make the playoff this year. If you had to bet money on one of these other teams, who are you putting the money on?
Probably Mizzou because of the schedule. I always look at who has the fewest questions against the most manageable schedule. And I think Mizzou and Tennessee both got a great draw, and I wouldn't be surprised if either of them ended up in the playoff this year.
John, say something nice about one of the other schools here.
Well, I'm going to go back to I'm going to go to Jay Smith here, and the thing is with Locked On Sooners, there's been a lot of conflict between Missouri and Oklahoma fans this offseason. So I want to throw an olive branch here and just say that I'm very much looking forward to the return of that rivalry. Jay, can I just throw a question to you? Dylan Gabriel, he transfers to Oregon. How are we feeling about the quarterback spot?
Oh, I'm loving it. There's a reason why Dylan Gabriel left, right? It wasn't because that he wanted to. It's more so because he knew that Jackson Arnold was the next thing. And so he was recruited in to be the guy. And we saw some flashes against Arizona. He looked like a true freshman, and he looked like a veteran at the same time. So for me, I'm pretty excited about the way he's going to look this coming season.
Andrew, you got something nice to say about one of the other teams on here?
Now, I've already done it a little bit, but yeah, I'm a believer that this Missouri team is better. I think there's two sides of this argument in the SEC. There's the people that go, they're a one-hit wonder, they're the Macarena, or then you've got the people that are going, okay, Missouri's the real deal. Coach Drink has them looking good. And I think it's a football team that is going to make the playoff. And after that, people are going to go, okay, Missouri's here to stay.
The thing, can I just hop on that? I think it's totally fair for national people to be like, hey, what's the deal with Missouri in the future? I think for this season, if you just objectively look at the amount of returning production the Tigers have offensively, the quarterback, the receivers, the line looks pretty solid. Question the defense all you want. You'd rather have a good offense than a good defense in a vacuum. So that's why the Tigers should be pretty good this season. If you want to say, hey, can they follow it up in the future? Fair question.
Eric, you like one of these other teams to make the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, of the teams on this panel, I hate to fall in line here. I guess I would go with Missouri, and I don't think I would have said this, obviously, a year ago after last year. But because what John just said, the production you bring back, and we're talking quarterbacks here, and a lot of our teams, with that we cover, quarterbacks got to go out and prove it. I mean, Brady Cook's gone out and proved it. Luther Burden at receiver, it's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Offensive line, so on and so forth. So I would probably say Missouri because of the schedule, as Matt pointed out, and of course the production you bring back offensively and defensively.
Eli Drinkwitz, 5-5, 6-7, 6-7. He goes 11-2 once, and now we're all in.
It's all in, baby. It's all good from here on out. I have no questions.
Happy to hear that.
We will see, guys. Thanks for joining us, and now we're going to head over to the doldrums of the SEC, the bottom feeders. Which other teams are looking to make something happen in 2024? Can Billy Napier survive the toughest schedule in the country? Who wins the SEC? That's coming up next. First, this episode presented to you by our friends over at Ibotta. Look, summertime is coming to an end, but that means we're about to hit football season, and you're going to be firing up that grill. Stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta, so you won't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You can get both. Ibotta, it's a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been looking at, the fancy dinner you've been thinking about. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift card. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. You could save on over 2,400 brands, shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use our code Locked On College. We continue on with our 2024 Locked On College football season preview. It is SEC edition, and we were teasing about the bottom feeders. We got a big portion of the league still to discuss in this group. And joining us now on our panel, it is Brandon Olson, host of Locked On Gators, Zach Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn, Chris Marler of Locked On Gamecocks, Corey Burton, Locked On Vandy, and John Neighbors, host of Locked On Razorbacks. And wouldn't you know it, Kentucky, they're too focused on basketball season. Lance Dawes not joining us this evening, and we'll also throw in a nugget or two on Mississippi State, but Jeff Lebby, he's got his work cut out for him this year. Guys, welcome in, and man, oh man, I like this group because there's somebody in this group that's going to have a better year than people are expecting, and I don't know who that's going to be. Zach, who's that going to be?
I think it's going to be the Auburn Tigers. I think this is an 8-4 football team with who they have on their schedule. I mean, I think they beat Arkansas. I think they beat Cal. I think they beat Vanderbilt, and I think they beat Oklahoma as well to start 5-0. And so when you look at what they're able to do after that, they've got a tough road stretch of going to Georgia, going to Missouri, going to Kentucky. If you can somehow win one or two of those, you've got a really solid chance to be an 8-4 football team.
Brandon, I assume you want to sell me on the Florida Gators?
I don't know if I want to sell you on the Florida Gators more or sell you on not the Auburn Tigers more.
Do that one. Sell us on not the Auburn Tigers.
This man just told me that he's going to go, that they're going to go beat Oklahoma, and I watched them lose to New Mexico State by 3 touchdowns last year. And I'm just saying
that entire operation is now in Nashville. So go figure.
That is true. That is true. No, all right. So, like, why is Oklahoma all of a sudden this scary force? They're replacing 5 offensive linemen. It's going to be their first time that their quarterback's on the road, and they're going to Jordan-Hare Stadium. Are you kidding me? This isn't some like unbeatable team.
When's the last time a non-conference team came to Jordan-Hare besides Mexico State? Was it Penn State? Because that was not close.
That's true, but thankfully Oklahoma is a conference opponent.
That's fair, yeah.
Well, and if you listen to Hugh Freeze, I mean, he's throwing out there he should have had more wins against Saban. I mean, maybe he should have had more wins last year at Auburn. Maybe that's what's getting them excited for this year. John Neighbors, Arkansas, arrow pointed upward. Where are we on the Hogs?
Well, yeah, if you look at it, Calipari did a great job in the transfer portal and got the #1 group, and recruiting was all got, but yeah, I mean, basketball, right? It's what matters. No, like, listen, Arkansas went 4-8 last year. They went 1-7. They actually beat Florida in Gainesville.
That was
so. The fact that Napier still has his job after that's a joke. But here's the thing: Bobby Petrino's back. I still can't believe it. And the last time Bobby Petrino was here, he went 21-5 in his final 2 seasons, and he also wrecked a motorcycle. So it's like,
did he though?
What do we got to lose? That's the most Arkansas thing ever. Listen, we got Bill Clinton, John Daly, Bobby Petrino, Jerry Jones. There's a pattern here of the type of people that we have at Arkansas. Hey, listen, incredible. We know who we are. We hate everybody equally.
Corey, you heard it from John. Arkansas now just a basketball school. Vandy's kind of been a baseball school, but they're hoping to win a couple more football games this year. And it's got some new faces around there. You mentioned the staff from New Mexico State, Pavia, the quarterback, Nate Johnson, a quarterback from Utah. So Vandy win a SEC game this year. It sounds like a crazy task, but it feels like that's the goal.
Yeah. I mean, every game's a toss-up, I guess, but there's some that are gettable. I mean, it can only go up. I mean, they were 2-10 a year ago. It can only go up, and FanDuel has them at 2.5 wins. So, I mean, their first three, you could probably hit the over in the first three with a possibility. I mean, Virginia Tech is a gettable game at this point. But there's been some improvements. There's been some things that Vandy's doing with the staff, with the philosophies and things like that. Like, it's not the same 2-10, crap fest it was a year ago. So we're looking to hopefully improve and maybe get one. I'm hopefully either Chris or Zach's team might be one of those in the crosshairs. Hopefully, I
was about to say I think Vandy takes it to South Carolina.
If they do, I'm going to quit the show. That's going to be a tough sell for me in the month of November. Listen. First off, I've said this for the past 2 years in a row, or maybe it was in 2022 because they went 2-10 last year. But Vandy over 2.5 wins feels like the lock of the year in the SEC. Like, they will get 3 wins. I don't. That's not where like the benchmark wants, like where you want it to be in Nashville, obviously. No. But I love us being, like I say us, but South Carolina being in the crosshairs of any of that, because it's like I haven't heard anybody outside of Columbia one time all offseason say, yeah, South Carolina could upset this team. They are 4-8 or 5-7 at the most. Like, it's like the ceiling for every single person outside of Columbia is 5 wins for South Carolina. I doubt that happens.
Wonder why.
It was just 2 years ago. Vandy did beat Kentucky and Florida. So let's see if they can do that again. That was with Anthony Richardson too, Brandon. That's
on the field in a single file line, like a fire drill.
The issue was that it was below 80 degrees, and so he already can't complete a forward pass. So you make it a little colder, and there was nothing going for him there.
Yeah, now he's killing it for the Indianapolis Colts. Marler, you touched on the South Carolina Gamecocks, but it's a big year for Shane Beamer. They've got to improve from last year, at minimum get to a bowl game, because he's been recruiting well, but man, South Carolina was a step backward after the year previous.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where they do their best work. It's like a Auburn light. Like, they do their best work when they don't have a ton of expectations. And I think that when you look at this year's schedule, like, it's going to be tough. I don't think the Beamer hot seat talk is nearly as real as people are saying it is. But you look at the schedule, you get Ole Miss, LSU, A&M, and Mizzou at home. They're going to beat one of those teams. The road records for those teams speaks for itself. They're going to jump up and get somebody, because I think this is like, it's August. We love off-season topics and confirmation bias, what we think we know. But there's always room for, there's always upsets in college football. I think they're going to jump up and get one of those teams.
Brandon, as we look at the Florida Gators, obviously the biggest question is, I mean, it's the toughest schedule of anybody out there. Got to do some early season work for Napier. Got to get these wins early.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough. The way that I look at it is that if you don't win those early games, it's really hard to sell me that you're going to win some of those late ones. Luckily, you get 8 games at home, so that helps you. Unfortunately, no Vandy, no South Carolina, so that's tough stuff there. I do think that the tough part about the schedule isn't that you're playing every elite team. I think it's that you don't get an off week. Basically, you have Samford in week 2. And 11 Power 4 teams. It's not an easy schedule. And when they put together the out-of-conference schedule, there were more Group of 5 games. Then UCF moved over, and things are going to get a little rough. But hey, I think that if you win 6 games, you keep your job, Billy. But
wow, what a bar!
Don't even start, Zach.
I don't want to hear
from coaches and being on the hot seat. That is, you do not get to talk right now.
You don't come to my defense, Chris. All right, just so you know how bad you got to be for Billy Napier to be 2-0 against you.
You guys could win the state of Florida and still be 5-7, and that would be the most hilarious thing that happens in college football. You could go 3-0 in the state of Florida and still go 5-7.
Hell of a recruiting class would come in then.
Hey, Phil Steele told me 2 weeks ago he's got Florida at 8 or 9 wins. So
he's a big fan of Graham Mertz. I've heard him talk about Graham Mertz. He's
got 2 fans now, which I think is big.
Yeah.
Did Bill tell you that after he told you all of his preseason records for the last 20 years?
I just want to make your quarterback's still Peyton Thorne, right?
It is.
Ooh,
and I
okay,
bet
more
Peyton
opinions.
Thorne throws for more this year than Graham Mertz does.
I'll take that bet.
Okay. We'll talk off air. We'll figure something out.
Okay.
He'll take it. I can't take that bet because we're going to run the ball so much when we go 12-0.
Why didn't you tell me that before I said that, Brandon? Never mind, Zach.
We're going to get to SEC predictions here in just a second, but let me go to John Neighbors. I like doing this segment. We did it last one. John, say something nice about one of the other teams on this panel.
No. Why would I do that?
Come on. You got to like Auburn or the Gators or the Gamecocks. You got to like one of these groups to
Yeah, I like this group. This group of teams is the ones that were in the third class on the Titanic. We had the best time. We were dancing around with Irish music and getting drunk off beer. Yeah, that's about as cool as it is. Like we're out here. Everyone else is in the champagne room, and we're down here just trying to get scraps and everything we can. No, I'll say something. I'll say something nice about I don't know, Vanderbilt. I love Nashville.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, you do.
That's all I got.
There you go.
There you go. Hey, that's enough right there.
Corey, you think we're underrating one of these teams in this group?
Possibly John's team. Not to pump his head up anymore, but John's team. I think
Taylon Green at quarterback.
Taylon Green's going to be a special quarterback there. So I really like the way he plays, and Sam Pittman is going to get a second chance here. I think.
I hope so.
I don't know how you feel about. I don't know how you guys in Arkansas land feel about Sam Pittman, but
I mean, it's like they love him if he wins. But I mean, that's the thing. It's weird having a coach that everyone kind of likes. I don't know. I don't like it. Like it's just like everyone hated Eric Musselman. Everyone kind of hated Bobby Petrino. Everyone kind of hated Brett Bielema. I mean, God hated Chad Morris. So it was just like, it's weird. But I think people are like rooting for him. They want him to win, but he's got to win. So
yeah.
That's how it feels with Clark Lee. They like Clark Lee, but it's just hard to root for him right now.
Billy Napier, nice guy, but Florida fans are like, you got to win now, Billy. All right, let's start here, guys. Give me your predictions. Who wins the SEC? Give me the two teams that play for the championship and who wins it. Brandon, we'll start with you.
I get to say my nice thing. Arkansas, Vandy, South Carolina. You're not Auburn. Good job, buddy. Proud of all of you there. It's the best thing I could say about anybody.
I'll take it.
I feel like we probably see Georgia, and it's just the worst. I feel like we probably see Georgia, Bama. I feel like that's going to be the combo, and I'm picking Bama because I refuse to pick Georgia. That's where I stand on it.
Wow. Kalen DeBoer gets it done in year one. Zach, who's in Atlanta?
Yeah, my SEC Media Days pick was Georgia over Bama. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Chris Marler?
Listen, I don't know how DeBoer is going to possibly compete without getting any in-state recruits. So, that's the future of the program is just falling by the wayside immediately in front of us. I will say I think it's going to be Georgia, Texas, just because of the way the schedule's set up. I wouldn't be surprised if a Mizzou or Tennessee even slips in there at 10-2. But I do think Georgia's the most talented team in the conference. I think Texas is the easiest route, though. So, I think those two teams get in there, and I think that Georgia is probably going to win.
Corey, who you got?
I think it's going to be Georgia over Texas. I agree with Chris on that one. I think the dark horse to watch out for is the Fighting Stephen Willis's. Ole Miss. There's somebody to watch out for, but I think ultimately it's going to be Georgia versus Texas in a rematch in the Battle of Austin. So,
Neighbors, who you got in Atlanta?
I feel like it's going to be a team that, there's not going to be a new team that's never gone to the SEC championship in there this year. So, no, it's not going to be Missouri. It's not going to be Ole Miss, all these teams. And it's not going to be Texas either. It's not going to be Oklahoma. It's not going to be anybody. It's going to be
just answer the question, John.
It's going to be Georgia, Alabama, and that's what it's going to be. Everyone's going to be like, oh, man, who's going to be the surprise this year? And it's not going to be anybody. It's going to be the same dadgum teams every year. So,
by the way, I don't like this pessimistic version of Neighbors at all. We need to get you back in that field.
That's who I am. What's going on?
Yeah, I'll tell you what's going on. Arkansas doesn't have a true rival in any sport. We have to hate everybody equally. So here we are. I just hate everybody. I hate everything. Arkansas had the worst 3-sport year ever because basketball had a losing season, football had a losing season, baseball gets bounced out. And listen, y'all have pro teams and everything in y'all states. This is all we got.
Yeah, in South Carolina, we got it all.
Yeah, Alabama's got a ton of pro teams. Yep.
You might as well with those Bama teams that have been fielded out there.
Oh, come on.
If it makes you feel any better, they're talking about MLB expansion here in Nashville. So, I don't know if that makes you feel any better.
That makes you feel any better, John. You guys still won't have a pro team, but another state will.
That's fine because
and John, y'all have got Walmart.
Yeah,
we got Chicken Man, and
and track and field is really good.
Yes,
for factual sake, I have to say Missouri has been to the SEC championship game under Gary Pinkel, so they have been there. But I'm going to go a new team. I'm going to say we get a rematch because we're probably going to get a rematch. You guys are saying Alabama and Georgia. Well, they play each other in the regular season, so one of those teams would have to, run the table, I guess, if you lose and get back there. But I think we get a rematch between Georgia and Ole Miss. I think for the first time ever, the Ole Miss Rebels get to Atlanta, and it's Lane Kiffin. Look, it's do or die time for Lane. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Is this the year Lane Kiffin puts it all together? He's got the weapons. He's got the team. Time to go do it and show out on the big stage. Are we all in agreement that Georgia wins the SEC championship, though?
Everyone except Sweden.
I think so.
It'll be a race to the finish, but I'm sure they're going to come in first. So
there it is. That is our 2024 Locked On College Football Season Preview, SEC edition. The SEC will win the national championship. It's probably going to be Georgia. It'll be 3 and 4 years. We'll start the word dynasty in Athens, and hey, at least it'll be bragging rights to say the SEC is back on top. And hey, we'll probably get that Michigan Jim Harbaugh title vacated anyway, and we won't even remember the Big Ten winning it last year. That is going to do it for us. Appreciate you guys for joining us, and best of luck to all of your SEC teams this year.